Hi, please tell me what your name is.
My name is Elspeth Bass.
And what do you do?
So I am at university. I'm studying Bachelor's of Science at the University of Sheffield in Psychology. I'm just finishing my placement year with Chrysalis Associates in Sheffield.
Okay, and yesterday you introduced me to a concept called Theraplay, which I had never heard of. Would you like to elaborate on that?
So Theraplay is a type of play therapy. Play therapy is quite a long spectrum. You have play therapy, the therapy in itself, which is child-led rather than adult-led. And then at the opposite end of the spectrum, you have Theraplay, which is adult-led rather than child-led. And it involves 4 core pillars, which are nurture, engagement, structure, and challenge. And it involves a lot of sensory regulation and co-regulation, and it's really meant to help the parent learn to co-regulate their child, and it's a very, very adaptable type of therapy, which is why we use it at Chrysalis. We're a specialist developmental trauma and attachment service. We work with children in adoption and care, and we've recently started diagnosing autism and FASD. And so, we found it to be highly adaptive, which is what led us to our research project.
Okay. So, and what is the project about?
So the project, we know based on previous research, there is a lot of overlap between autism and trauma, specifically complex and developmental trauma, and we focus on developmental trauma here. And what we've found is that traditional therapies are not effective at reducing trauma symptoms in autistic individuals because of that overlap. The overlap means that traditional therapies are actually targeting autism symptoms rather than trauma symptoms. So there's not much of a change. Or if there is a change, it's actually the child masking more, and so they don't feel more comfortable with themselves, which is obviously not a good thing, and they will eventually down the line show further behavioural dysregulation and emotional dysregulation. So what we wanted to do was to test the adaptability of Theraplay for reducing trauma symptoms, developmental trauma symptoms and attachment difficulty symptoms in autistic clients versus non-autistic clients. So this is a 5-year retrospective study. We gathered our data from 2019 to 2024. This is a service evaluation, so we use the data from our own clients. We have gathered consent and everything that we needed, and so we had a pre-test, and then 10 weeks, which had 3 hours of commitment per week. 1 hour was Theraplay, another hour was sensory regulation, and another hour was therapeutic parenting. So that was 3 hours for 10 weeks, and then after that was the post assessment after the 10 weeks. And what we had found is that if we look over here, the trauma symptoms reduced in the autistic group and the non-autistic group. Regulation and executive functioning relating to trauma reduced in the autistic group and the non-autistic group. Behavioural and emotional presentations relating to trauma reduced in the autistic group and the non-autistic group. But this one is where we find quite an interesting finding. So we used the ACC, which is the assessment checklist for children. The ACC is a questionnaire. It has 120 items, and it measures behavioural presentations, various behavioural presentations, including attachment and patterns of relating. And so what you will see here is that the total clinical score for the autistic group increased, and you can see the pattern here. Non-reciprocal stayed the same, indiscriminate increased, whereas for the non-autistic group it decreased the total, non-reciprocal and indiscriminate. So we wondered what's going on here. But what we realised was that non-reciprocal and indiscriminate, when you're screening for autism, when somebody starts picking up on the fact that a child might be autistic, one of the first things that they notice is difficulties with reciprocating social and emotional cues, and discriminating in how they approach different people. For example, you probably wouldn't want to talk to your boss the same way that you talk to somebody at a store. I'm autistic. I do them both the same way. So there you go. So what we were actually finding here was that this finding showed that Theraplay is effective in reducing trauma, as it showed here, these 3 findings here, but was also neuroaffirmative because the children were able to unmask and felt more comfortable in themselves in this finding here that shows actually we're not measuring attachment difficulties here, we're measuring autism. And so one of the things that we are hoping will come from this, either us or another research group, is the development of a tool that will that is sensitive enough to measure attachment patterns in autistic individuals pre and post therapy. I think there needs to be more research into attachment presentations in autistic individuals before that happens, because I think, based on the fact that generally autistic people relate differently, I think there will also be a difference in attachment patterns as well. That's not necessarily to say that it's wrong. It's not wrong. There's nothing wrong with autism, but I think that there's a difference. Mm-hmm. And also, we're following up on this study. We are interviewing our therapists, our Theraplay therapists, and I've helped out with that one as well. We've interviewed them to see how the specifics of how they are adapting Theraplay to our clients with ADHD, our clients with autism, and our clients with FASD. FASD is fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, what we want to do is find the specific mechanisms of how Theraplay can be used to be tailored so that it is both neuroaffirmative but also target those trauma symptoms so that the child suffers less from developmental trauma and attachment difficulties, and instead is able to build that attachment with their parents and with other significant adults and significant others, and be able to function as well as they are able.
All right. Yeah. Thank you a lot.
Yeah.
I can't wait to do this in long format.